It was the kind of Charleston evening that tricked you into thinking summer was still holding on, even though fall had technically started. The air was warm but crisp, and the soft glow of street lamps reflected off the cobblestones as I pulled up to the private club where Melanie's brother Nate was hosting his birthday party. I sat in the car for a moment longer than necessary. The engine idled quietly while I stared at the bottle of wine resting on the passenger seat. Melanie's favorite Riesling from that little vineyard we visited years ago on a weekend trip to Asheville. She didn't even know I remembered it. I had picked it up on the way over, hoping it would be a nice gesture. A silent offering of sorts. Things between us had been strained lately, but I kept telling myself that's how marriage goes sometimes. Stress, busy schedules, misaligned moods. It happens. You ride it out. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a twinge of hesitation before I opened the car door and stepped out into the night. The club was an old colonial building, elegant in the kind of way that made you feel like you should apologize if your shoes weren't polished. Inside, the air was filled with the low hum of conversation and the clinking of glassware. A jazz trio played in the corner beneath a wrought iron chandelier, and the smell of cedar and aged bourbon hung in the air like perfume. I scanned the room. Nate was easy to spot, tall and broad-shouldered, laughing with a group of people by the bar. A few of Melanie's aunts hovered near the charcuterie table. I nodded politely to them as I passed, bottle in hand, weaving through the crowd. I didn't see Melanie at first, not until I turned toward the far end of the room. There, in a quieter corner near the bay windows, she stood. My wife. She was leaning in close to a man I didn't recognize. He was younger, late 20s maybe, early 30s at most, clean-shaven with styled hair and a tailored blazer that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. He had that relaxed, expensive look that made people assume he belonged, no matter where he was. Melanie was laughing at something he said. Her hand was wrapped around his, lightly, playfully, like someone tugging on a secret. And the way she stood, it wasn't the way you stand next to your friend. It was the kind of posture that had an asterisk Macy baked into it like muscle memory. Familiarity disguised as casualness. They didn't see me at first. I froze, instinctively tightening my grip on the wine bottle. My feet felt glued to the hardwood floor while my mind tried to make sense of what I was seeing. The voice in my head tried to play it down. Maybe it's a coworker, family friend, someone from the gym. But something deeper, older, refused to accept that. It didn't feel innocent. It didn't look like friendship. And then she saw me. Her body jerked. Just a split-second flinch, barely perceptible unless you were watching closely. She let go of his hand like it had suddenly become scalding, and turned toward me with a wide, too bright smile. "Alex," she said, walking briskly over to me. "You made it." She kissed me on the cheek, too quick, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear in that way she did when she was nervous or needed a moment to collect herself. "I thought work might keep you late," she added, loud enough for a few people nearby to hear. I held up the wine bottle. "Wouldn't miss Nate's party." She laughed lightly, and for anyone watching, it probably looked like a normal exchange between husband and wife. But I wasn't watching her face. I was watching him, the man she had just been standing with. He didn't look away fast enough. Our eyes met for a moment, his expression unreadable. Not quite guilt, not quite defiance. Just an unsettling calm, like he was already 2 steps ahead of whatever confrontation I might have been imagining. Melanie turned quickly, motioning toward the food table. "Come on, let's get you something to eat. You look exhausted, long week?" I blinked, her words hitting me like stage direction. A script she had already written for the night. Frame it as fatigue. Keep the focus on me. Make it seem like I was the one acting strangely. My throat tightened, but I forced a smile. "Yeah, one of those weeks." She looped her arm through mine and started walking, talking rapidly about Nate's new job and the club renovations and who brought what dessert. I barely heard her. My mind was still back in that corner, trying to stitch together the split-second interaction that had already been buried under party chatter and polite distractions. We reached a table where her parents were seated, and she made the introductions again, as if I hadn't known these people for years. Her mom smiled warmly. You really do look tired, Alex. Are they working you to death over there? Something like that, I said, playing along. Melanie chimed in quickly. He's been swamped all month. Hardly gets a break. She gave my arm a squeeze and leaned in close like we were the happiest couple in the room. From the outside, we probably looked like it. We were good at that, playing our roles when it counted, smiling through whatever cracks were forming underneath. But I hadn't forgotten the glance, the hand-holding, the way she dropped his touch like she'd been caught. As we chatted with her family, I glanced back toward the corner, just once. He was still there, alone now, sipping something amber in a lowball glass. And just before he turned away, I saw it, his hand. It slid gently across Melanie's lower back as she passed him on the way to the bar. Quick, secretive, like he thought no one would notice. But I did. I noticed everything. That night, after the party, I couldn't sleep. Melanie was already in bed when I got home, claiming she had a headache from the wine and the noise. She didn't ask if I wanted to stay up and talk, didn't wait for me to come to bed. She just disappeared into the bedroom and shut the door behind her, like a curtain dropping after a performance. I stayed on the couch, the glow of the streetlights cutting a line across the hardwood floor, my eyes locked on the ceiling. I wasn't ready to confront her, not yet. I didn't even know what I would be confronting her about. But I also couldn't pretend I didn't see what I saw. I kept going back to that moment at the club, her hand in his, the glance, the touch on her back. It felt like the final puzzle piece, the one you try to ignore until it clicks into place and you suddenly see the whole picture. But in truth, that picture had been forming long before tonight. I just hadn't wanted to admit it. Looking back, it started with little things. About 6 months ago, Melanie changed her perfume. She used to wear something soft, floral, lavender and vanilla, warm and subtle. One day, without saying anything, she swapped it out for something sharper, muskier. I noticed the first time she walked past me in the kitchen, the scent catching me off guard. You wearing something new? I'd asked, smiling. She barely glanced at me. Yeah, got it from a coworker. Some boutique place. No explanation beyond that. No enthusiasm. No, do you like it? Just a flat reply like she didn't care whether I noticed or not. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal. People change scents all the time. But now, months later, I remember how unfamiliar it felt. How foreign it made her seem in her own skin. Then came the meetings. Melanie works in corporate marketing, the kind of job that always seemed to hover somewhere between chaotic and flexible. There were always presentations, client dinners, networking events. I never questioned it. She was good at what she did. I was proud of her. But slowly, her schedule started shifting. She'd get home later, sometimes 2, even 3 hours later than usual. And when I asked, she always had the same answer: meeting ran long, or had to grab drinks with the team, or last-minute client ask. She said it with the same bored tone you'd use to talk about traffic. I wanted to trust her, so I did. First. Then one evening, about a month ago, I found a receipt in her coat pocket. I wasn't snooping. I was grabbing it to take it to the dry cleaners and it fell out. It was from a high-end steakhouse on the waterfront, a place she and I had only been to once, for our anniversary. The receipt was for 2 people, 2 entrees, 2 drinks, a shared dessert. When I asked her about it, she didn't miss a beat. Oh, that was with Claire from the sales team, she said. She was dealing with a rough breakup, so I took her out. Didn't I mention it? No, she hadn't. And Claire, from what I knew, was a vegetarian. But I let it go. I didn't want to be the suspicious husband. I told myself I was being paranoid. That one dinner didn't mean anything. That maybe Claire was going through something, and maybe she just ordered mashed potatoes and the steak was a mistake on the receipt. I made up more excuses than she did. Still, it got harder to ignore. There were other things. Small, stupid things that piled up like dust. She changed the password on her phone. Not once, but twice. She used to leave her laptop open in the living room, but now it stayed zipped in her bag, or locked away in the office. If I passed behind her while she was texting, she'd tilt the screen away. I tried to chalk it up to workplace confidentiality. Maybe she was dealing with sensitive client info, but deep down I knew better. One morning, she left in a rush. Said she was meeting a client for brunch on the east side of town, a place I knew was nowhere near her office. I didn't say anything then, just nodded and kissed her goodbye. Later that day, I ran an errand and noticed she'd left the glove box open in her car. Not sure why I even noticed or why I checked, but inside was a receipt from a parking garage downtown, nowhere near the brunch spot. Next to it was a pack of protein bars she never ate, and a worn baseball cap with a logo I didn't recognize. Men's style, not hers. I held it in my hands for a long time, turning it over like it could tell me something. It smelled faintly of cologne, one I didn't own. That night, she came home cheerful, like nothing had happened. Told me brunch went great, showed me a blurry photo of a plate of eggs and toast, and went on about some new account she was excited about. I asked her if she stopped anywhere else. She shook her head. Nope, straight home after. That was when I stopped asking. Not because I believed her, but because I didn't want to hear her lie to me again. We started drifting. Plans we used to make together, weekend trips, movie nights, dinner with friends, began to fall apart. I'd bring something up and she'd say, "Let's play it by ear." Or, "I might have something with work." She got vague about her calendar. Always tired. Always busy. Always somewhere else. At first, I tried harder. Cooked her favorite meals. Bought her flowers. Planned a surprise weekend getaway to Asheville. She said she had too much on her plate at work. Maybe in a few weeks. But the weeks came and went, and I stopped planning. She started accusing me of being distant, of not listening, of being too wrapped up in my job. She said I wasn't present anymore, that I seemed like I was checked out. It was almost funny. I was the one who stayed up waiting for her to come home. I was the one trying to piece us back together while she kept dropping pieces behind her like breadcrumbs she didn't want me to follow. And then, one night, about a week before Nate's party, she came home late again. I was sitting on the couch, the TV on mute, when she walked through the door. "Hey," she said casually, kicking off her heels. "Sorry, the client dinner went long." She looked good. Too good. Fresh lipstick, hair still holding curl. Heels she rarely wore unless it was a special occasion. I wanted to ask her where she really was. I wanted to scream at her. But instead I just nodded. "Hope it went well." She looked at me then, as if trying to read my expression. For a second, I thought she was going to say something more. Confess, maybe. Explain. But she just gave me a tired smile and disappeared into the bedroom. That night, I lay in bed next to her, eyes wide open while she slept facing the other way. And then came Nate's party. And him. And the look. And the touch. And suddenly all of it, the perfume, the password changes, the lies, clicked into place. It wasn't paranoia. It was the truth. I didn't confront Melanie that night. After the party, we drove home in silence. She didn't ask why I was quiet. I didn't ask her why that man at the club had touched her like they were something. We just sat there in the car, the radio low, the only sound between us the tick of the turn signal and the hum of the tires against the pavement. She went straight to bed when we got home. No goodnight kiss. No thanks for coming. Just a soft click of the bedroom door closing behind her. I stood in the kitchen for a while, staring at the unopened wine bottle I'd brought to the party. I'd left it in the car, still neatly bagged with tissue paper. I had picked it out for her, remembered the vintage she liked, driven across town to get it. She hadn't even noticed I was carrying it when I walked into the club. Eventually, I went to the guest room and lay on top of the blankets, fully dressed. I didn't want to sleep next to her, not while the weight of everything I'd seen and suspected pressed so hard against my chest it felt like I couldn't breathe. That was the moment I knew. Whatever was going on, it wasn't in my head. I wasn't imagining this. I hadn't misunderstood some innocent moment. I had seen what I saw, and I needed proof. Not for some dramatic confrontation, not to scream or beg or rage, but for clarity, for leverage, for closure. The next morning, I got a text from Melanie's sister, Amanda. "Hey, you have time to meet today? Just you." That was it. No emoji, no smiley face, just 4 words. Just you. I'd always had a decent relationship with Amanda. She was Melanie's younger sister by 4 years, blunt to a fault, sharp as hell. We got along better when Melanie wasn't in the room. I didn't know what she wanted to talk about, but something about her message felt urgent, like maybe she'd been holding something in for too long and couldn't anymore. We met at a quiet cafe outside the city, the kind of place where people sipped lattes and typed on laptops, music playing soft enough you could pretend it wasn't there. Amanda was already seated when I arrived, her hair pulled back in a bun, dark sunglasses perched on top of her head like she'd been debating whether to wear them inside. She didn't smile when I sat down. She just looked at me and said, "You doing okay?" I paused, then shrugged. "Define okay." She nodded like she expected that answer. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a plain manila envelope, thick and sealed with a single strip of tape. She slid it across the table toward me like she was passing classified documents. "I didn't want to be involved," she said, her voice low. "But I can't keep pretending I don't know what's happening. Not after last night." I stared at the envelope. "What is this?" I asked. She folded her hands on the table. "Photos, dates, proof." I didn't open it right away. I just looked at her, trying to gauge her expression. She looked tired, angry, a little guilty. "How long have you known?" I asked. Amanda sighed. "I started noticing things around spring. Melanie started canceling plans with me. I'd ask where she was and she'd give me these vague answers. Then one night, I saw her downtown, coming out of a hotel. She didn't see me. She was with him, the same guy from last night." She paused, like she was giving me a moment to process it. "I followed them once," she admitted. "That's how I got the photos." I figured, if she was going to lie to everyone, someone needed to tell the truth. I finally reached out and peeled the tape from the envelope. Inside was a thick stack of photographs, some printed on glossy paper, others just grainy, timestamped **TS from what looked like security footage or a telephoto lens. Each one was worse than the last. Melanie and him walking out of a high-end restaurant. Melanie and him getting into a car outside a hotel. Melanie and him kissing in the front seat. Melanie, half-wrapped in a towel, posing in a mirror selfie while he stood behind her. Shirtless, phone in hand. Her smile in the photo was effortless. Familiar. I'd seen that smile before. Thought it belonged to me. There were date stamps on several of the photos, some of them going back 4 months. Weekends when she told me she was on work trips. Evenings when she came home late smelling like that new perfume. Nights I spent alone on the couch, wondering why things felt so cold between us. It wasn't just a recent thing. It had been going on. She'd been building a double life, and I'd been living in its shadow. I looked up at Amanda. "You sure about all of this?" She didn't blink. "Yeah, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't." I sat back, heart pounding, throat dry. My fingers were still gripping the envelope like it might disappear if I let go. She hesitated, then added, "There's more. Last night at the party, Melanie told me she thought you'd be working late. Said she was thinking of inviting someone over after." I looked at her, blinking slowly. "You mean him?" Amanda nodded. "Yeah, him." I stared out the window. Cars passed, people laughed, coffee steamed behind the counter. It all felt wrong. Too normal for the kind of earthquake that had just cracked through the center of my life. "I didn't want to believe it either," Amanda said quietly. "She's my sister. But she's not the person you married anymore. Alex. I don't know who she is." I nodded, swallowing the stone in my throat. "Yeah, I don't think I do either." I left the cafe with the envelope tucked under my arm, my steps slower than usual. The sky looked grayer than it had earlier, like it knew what I'd just seen. I didn't go home. Instead, I checked into a cheap motel on the other side of the city. One of those places that smelled faintly of bleach and cigarette smoke, with wallpaper that curled at the edges and a front desk clerk who didn't ask questions. It was perfect, anonymous, temporary, exactly what I needed. I spread the photos out on the motel bed, laid them in rows like evidence from a crime scene. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? A slow, quiet crime. A betrayal that didn't come with alarms or sirens but still left destruction in its wake. That night I got to work. I logged into our shared accounts and started freezing what I could. Credit cards, savings, anything with both our names on it. I moved half into a separate account under my name only, nothing underhanded, just what was legally mine. Then I started collecting evidence. I made digital copies of the photos, scanned in the receipts I'd found, printed out messages from our shared calendars showing inconsistencies. I documented every late-night excuse, every password change, every unexplained charge. I called a divorce attorney the next morning. Her name was Christine, specialized in infidelity cases. Her voice was calm, direct, professional. I sent her everything. She responded with a plan. No confrontation, no warning. File quietly, serve the papers, cut off financial access, let the facts speak for themselves. I liked it. It was clean, precise, honest. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to yell. I was just going to walk away, after making sure she couldn't spin the story. The next day, Melanie tried to buy something. Her card was declined. Then the joint account. Empty. My phone lit up with texts, missed calls, emails. She sent a voice memo at one point, her voice trembling, calling my name like I was lost. But I wasn't the one who got lost. She was, and I wasn't coming back to find her. The first text came in at 9:12 a.m. Melanie. Hey, my card just got declined at the gas station. Is there something wrong with the account? Then another. Melanie. Alex? Can you call me please? Something's going on with our bank. Then one more, 30 minutes later. Melanie. Seriously, what the hell is happening? None of my cards are working. Did you freeze everything? I didn't respond. I just watched the messages pile up on my screen like debris from a building that had collapsed. Her voice memos followed shortly after, first confused, then frustrated, then finally desperate. The one that stuck with me was the second one, where she tried to sound calm but kept pausing between words, like she was realizing mid-sentence that her world was shifting under her feet. Alex, I really don't understand what's happening. Can you please just call me back? If this is about last night, I think we should talk. Please, I'm worried. Worried. That was new. She hadn't been worried when she lied, or when she kissed him in that car, or when she planned to bring him into our house thinking I'd be stuck in meetings past dark. No, this wasn't guilt talking. This was panic. Panic at losing control. Panic at losing her version of the story. By the afternoon, I had blocked her number. I didn't do it out of anger. I did it because I knew what would come next. The gaslighting, the fake apologies, the sudden rewriting of history where she was the misunderstood one, where I had drifted first, where the man from the party just meant comfort. No, she didn't get to steer this anymore. I emailed her a single sentence through my lawyer. You will receive legal correspondence shortly. Do not attempt to contact me directly. That was it. By the end of the week, the divorce papers were delivered to her office. Clean, brutal, and undeniable. I didn't need theatrics. I didn't need her tears. The truth, once seen, couldn't be unseen. And then the real unraveling began. It started slowly, little cracks in the social veneer she had so carefully built. Her meetings dried up. Mutual friends stopped responding to her invitations. Her parents, stunned by the evidence Amanda and I shared, called me first to ask what happened. Then they called her, and from what I heard later, it did not go well. Word spreads fast in circles that pretend to keep secrets, especially when you no longer bother keeping them. I didn't go around broadcasting it. I didn't need to. The photos spoke for themselves. I shared them with only the people who needed to know. Her family, her close friends, the couple we were once friends with before she ghosted them last fall. The ones who always said, Melanie seems different lately, but never pushed it further. Turns out I wasn't crazy. Turns out they saw it too. It was like a curtain falling. And when it did, everyone saw her standing there in the light, holding the broken pieces of two lives, hers and mine. The man from the party, her escape hatch, her shiny alternative, vanished within days. Deleted social media accounts. Blocked her number. Amanda said she heard Melanie crying on the phone to their cousin, saying he wasn't who she thought he was. No surprise there. Guys like him never stick around when the fantasy ends. She stopped posting online, stopped smiling in photos, stopped pretending everything was okay. Meanwhile, I moved forward. I didn't move fast, but I moved intentionally. Quietly, I packed a few things from the house. My grandfather's watch, some framed pictures that still meant something to me, and a box of records I hadn't touched in years. The rest I left. Let her keep it. Let her be surrounded by the furniture we picked out together, the rugs we argued over, the fake life she set fire to. I rented a modest apartment across the city. Nothing fancy, just clean and quiet. It had a small balcony where I could drink coffee in the morning, a living room that didn't feel like it echoed someone else's lies, and a desk where I started journaling again. Funny how writing things down helped. I hadn't done that in years. I joined a gym, not to get revenge fit, not for a post-divorce glow-up, but because I needed to feel like I had control over something again. My body, my time, my headspace. I started waking up early, cooking simple meals, reading, not for distraction, but to remember what it felt like to choose something just for myself. Friends I hadn't seen in months started reaching out again. Some of them admitted they'd felt pushed away, said I hadn't seemed like myself for a while. They were right. I hadn't been. You lose parts of yourself slowly when you're with someone who's not really with you. You give and they take. And eventually, you forget what it was like to live without feeling like you're always falling short. But now, alone, I was starting to feel like me again. A version of myself that wasn't trying to fix someone else's silence. A man who didn't have to wonder who his wife was texting, or whether a parking receipt would rewrite his night. Melanie, for her part, didn't stay silent. About 6 weeks after the papers were served, I got an email from her personal account. I recognized the subject line before I saw her name. Please read this. It was a wall of text, rambling, emotional, full of phrases like, I never meant to hurt you, and I miss us, and I didn't know how to tell you I was lost. She blamed stress, confusion, her parents' marriage. Said she thought I'd given up on her. Said I seemed distant, like I was already halfway out the door before she ever opened hers. And maybe that's the most twisted part. How well cheaters convince themselves they're the victims of the very wreckage they cause. I didn't respond. I didn't delete it either. I just marked it as read and archived it. Let it live in my inbox as a tombstone. One I'd already grieved over and buried. 2 weeks after that, a letter showed up at my apartment. Handwritten. Same looping cursive from birthday cards and anniversary notes. I opened it. Same script. Different format. Same ending. Regret. Apology. A hint of hope that maybe someday we could sit down and talk. Maybe over coffee. Maybe just to find peace. But I already had peace. It lived in my quiet mornings. My new apartment. The pages of my journal. The emptiness that used to ache and now just felt open. Like space for something new. I didn't hate her. Not anymore. Hate's just another tether. And I was done being tied to someone who looked me in the eye for years while plotting an escape behind my back. Closure didn't come in a dramatic showdown. It came in the silence that followed when I chose not to answer. Some mornings I'd wake up and forget. For a few seconds, I'd reach across the bed like I used to, expecting to feel Melanie's back, warm under the covers, or hear the faint buzz of her alarm before she hit snooze for the 3rd time. My hand would land on cold sheets. Silence. The air still. The bed mine entirely. I thought it would break me, but eventually it became comforting. The stillness. The absence of weight I hadn't realized I was carrying until it was gone. Like waking up from a dream that started sweet and turned sour without you noticing. You don't fight to go back into it. You let it go. The months after the divorce moved in strange rhythms. At first, there were sharp edges. Grocery shopping was weird. I'd reach for something she used to like. Her favorite yogurt, that brand of cereal only she ate, before stopping myself halfway. I rearranged the kitchen not for functionality, but because the layout reminded me of her. Same with the living room, and the coat rack, and the playlist on my phone. I changed what I could. I cut my hair shorter, started biking on weekends, signed up for a language class on a whim, not to reinvent myself but to remind myself that I could still choose things, still be curious, still move forward without having to negotiate every decision. I didn't jump into dating. That wasn't on my radar yet. I needed to remember who I was when I wasn't Melanie's husband. That label had followed me for years, and it had slowly eaten away at the version of me that once existed without it. The new place started to feel like home. I kept it simple: clean lines, soft lights, a couple of plants I miraculously managed not to k***. I hung up a few framed prints I'd been meaning to display for years but never got around to. One day, I sat on the couch, sipping coffee and watching the morning sun pour through the blinds, and I realized something that almost made me laugh. I liked my life, not in the overconfident, performative social media post kind of way, but in the real, quiet sense. I liked how it felt to not be walking on eggshells, to not be second-guessing every silence, to not constantly wonder if the person you loved had already turned away from you long before they admitted it. Some people can live in denial for a long time. I'd lived in it for years, I think. But once you leave, once you breathe real air again, you can't go back. I reconnected with a few old friends, guys I hadn't seen in years. We got drinks, played cards on someone's deck until midnight. They didn't press for details, just said they were glad I was around again. One of them, Tyler, said something that stuck with me. "You always used to show up, man. But then it was like you were there. But not." He didn't say it with malice, just honesty. He was right. Grief does weird things to you. And yes, divorce is grief, just with paperwork. I started therapy too. At first, I told myself it was just to process the betrayal. But it turned into something bigger, deeper. I started unpacking patterns I hadn't seen before. Why I ignored the red flags. Why I tolerated the slow erosion of connection. Why I blamed myself for things I couldn't control. The truth was, I'd built my identity around being reliable, steady, the guy who fixes things. And when the marriage started cracking, I did what I always do. I tightened the bolts, patched the leaks, worked harder, gave more. But you can't repair something when the other person is secretly sawing through the foundation. One night, about 4 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's me. Just wondering how you've been. I miss talking to you." No name, but I didn't need one. I stared at the screen for a long time. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just done. I didn't respond. A week later, I got a DM on Instagram from a burner account. Same tone, same voice. "I don't expect you to reply. I just want you to know I still think about you. About us." I blocked it. I wasn't trying to be cruel, but I'd already had the conversation dozens of times in my head. What could she possibly say now that would matter? That would change anything? Regret is easy when the consequences land. Silence, I found, was harder but cleaner. It said everything I needed to without giving her another platform to spin her version of the story. And besides, I had started building something else. Her name was Claire. We met at the gym of all places. Not in some cliché. She was on the elliptical, I was lifting weights kind of way. More like, she was reading a book on the rowing machine, and I joked that she was going to ruin cardio for every guy in the room by making us all feel lazy and illiterate. She laughed, rolled her eyes. We talked for 5 minutes, then 10 the next time, then coffee, then more. We weren't dating. Not officially. Just two people figuring things out. No pressure. No expectations. And that was the beauty of it. There was nothing performative. No trying to prove anything. Just presence. And ease. She didn't know my whole story yet. Just the shape of it. And that was enough for now. One Sunday afternoon, I was back at the old neighborhood picking up some mail that had been forwarded late. Melanie had never updated her name on a couple of things, and I was trying to clean up the mess that always seems to linger after the ink dries on divorce papers. I parked a few houses down and walked the block. Familiar sidewalk. Familiar smell of someone grilling in the distance. I hadn't been back since I left. It was weird seeing the house again. Not as my home, but just another building. Her car was in the driveway. Someone else's, too. Not him, though. Not the man from the party. Maybe a friend. Maybe no one. I didn't care. That's what caught me off guard. I didn't feel anything. No ache. No nostalgia. Just neutrality. That's how you know you're healing. Not when the pain fades, but when the story no longer controls the room when you walk in. Back at my apartment, I sorted the mail, tossed a few things, kept a letter from my old accountant. Then I sat by the window with a beer and watched the sun settle behind the buildings. The city humming in the distance, steady and alive. And I thought about everything I'd lost. Then I thought about everything I'd gained. Peace, clarity, a life that felt mine again. Melanie would probably reach out again someday. Maybe when she saw I had moved on. Maybe out of guilt. Or boredom. Or some twisted attempt at redemption. But I knew what I'd say. Nothing. And that silence? That was love too. Just finally directed toward myself.